Another question to all of the coaches is from Chris Taylor from Texas. If there were a single quality you desired in a fellow you work with, what would that quality be?
This is Andre. I would appreciate honesty. My job is to help you. So if there's something that you need, I want to help you get it. If there's a question that has been unanswered, I want to help you understand it. And I realize that it can be very, very lonely at the top when you have to make decisions publicly that have the effect on the community and sometimes have an effect on your career. As we mentioned, when you work for the board, sometimes you're at their mercy. And it's not easy to make these decisions. And I don't think sometimes in the community who are your colleagues who share the same stressors. And so I would like to create an honest rapport where I can serve as an advocate for you, but also as a confidant about the things that you might not ordinarily be able to ask of others, and create that kind of honest relationship where I can help you grow.
Joan or Carol, would you also like to answer the question?
Sure. This is Joan, and I would say I'm looking for something similar to that. Someone who's willing to be open, honest about where they're comfortable and not comfortable in the challenges they face, so we can really dive in and talk about, how to move beyond what seems most challenging at any given time, and some ability in that to be self-reflective and where I've got, for myself or for the other person, to be clear about where they feel confident they have some skills and where they think there are some skills that they could learn. Working with my managers on a daily basis, it's that need to do some self-reflection that's most important in helping them move ahead to take on something new or to feel like they've found a way to approach a persistent challenge.
So this is Carol. It's probably unanimous that the open, honest communication is what I would say also. The other part is to be willing to be open, that, flexibility to say, yep, we can talk about something different. It's not my comfort zone, but let's go there anyway. I think that's all a great character trait.
Thank you. This is a question for Joan. What strategies have you used to stabilize services or programs during the difficult economic times?
Thanks, and I'd love to talk more about that. It'll be more than the 30-second, 60-second answer I think we can afford on the call. So I'll look for you in San Antonio. Who asked the question?
This was Sylvia Proud in Colorado.
Well, in terms of the strategies I use for the mass downsizing, and it's clear the other coaches have done this too, so we've all tried things, some of which worked, didn't. But in my case, it was one strategy was using our management team think through where we could make huge changes to our sort of our benefits package or our services, and also change how we did our work. And by thinking our way through that differently than just trying to do a more normal cut from the bottom sort of thing, we came up with a way to retrofit our whole clinic system. The result of that was that we eliminated 25% of our jobs. We eliminated whole job classes and said, we don't need to do those particular jobs anymore, or those job classes were designed for an old-fashioned clinical service, and we don't have that kind of service or those needs anymore. It was really shocking to the community, and yet it resulted in redesigning all of the workflow for all of our clinics and making them much more modern. So, and there were many union challenges in that, and certainly hard feelings and all of that, but because the managers worked their way through it carefully before we implemented it. So I would just say that's an example of one strategy, and it wouldn't have been one that I would have seen when I took on the directorship 5 years ago.
Thank you, Joan. Would any of the fellows who are not in front of a computer, who are on the phone, like to ask any questions?
This is Mary in Arizona, and I was wondering if you could speak to the process for how the fellows and coaches will be matched up.
Fellows after this call will be asked to submit to me their top 3 choices out of the 6 coaches in our Western region, and from that we'll be doing our best to match you with your top preference. Each coach will be matched with a team of 5.
Okay, thank you. This is Laura Whalen. If maybe a brief word or two about your the reality of accreditation.
Okay, would any of the coaches like to address Laura's question about accreditation?
Well, this is Carol. Let me go first, since I probably should have divulged this during my initial comments. In my current role, I also serve as the chair of the Public Health Accreditation Board. So you might assume that I'm very, very much in favor and supportive of that initiative that is going through. That being said, Idaho has not yet applied as a state or any of our locals as we are marching through the prerequisites that need to happen. I think that we are just beginning that process. The first states and locals have just gone through some site visits and have not yet announced any accredited health department as such. I do think it's a process in the making, and a lot of it's dependent upon our partners at CDC and Robert Wood Johnson that have been helping to fund some of this initiative. So I just thought I should lay that out there first so that you would know where I'm coming from.
This is Andre. We're certainly beginning the process in Washington State to talk about accreditation, but accreditation is part of a larger issue, which is that we're going through a process now of moving from a clinic-based care intervention service model to a population-based model or a community model. And so the challenge for us locally has been to, stop operating clinics and find a way to still serve the community on a much, much smaller budget. It's a difficult issue. So we've began locally with rebuilding our strategic plan and rebuilding our relationship with the community and how we serve them. So accreditation is part of the conversation, but it's a much larger question about how we value ourselves and what our responsibility is going to be to the community before we can even begin the process of accreditation.
This is Joan, and just really quickly, I served on one of the national groups that it was titled Exploring Accreditation, where we looked at what would be the value of moving forward in accreditation. And I held really strong opinions throughout that process. Some of them were very pro-accreditation, and some of them were not so pro. And I'd be really interested in the year ahead having conversations about how to prepare for accreditation, and also conversations that might shape how the accreditation work that FAB and others will oversee happens in our communities and in our health departments. I see it as having the opportunity to bring us some very strong value. I also want to make sure that we use it in a way that accreditation and making standards or meeting standards really improves public health and not just a checklist of things to do in order to have quicker access to funding or whatever. I really want to see that it improves the quality of our work. And then a postscript comment to that is, I see a question on the computer, and Andre mentioned it as well. Real concern about the clinical services that we provide in our communities today, that as we work our way through health reform, we will not necessarily be able to do those services. And I think public health needs to have a really important and honest dialogue about that. It's not going to be a simple matter to change our set of services in communities that are not well prepared for the impacts of health reform. So I think those are a bit related, and the choices we make may affect what we do vis-a-vis accreditation.
Would any of the other coaches like to also address questions regarding funding being cut to local health departments, about providing clinical services after the Affordable Care Act goes into effect?
Well, I'm very pleased that the Affordable Care Act is going to go into effect, but I also am very concerned about what the role of public health will be in that conversation. There are many things that public health has traditionally handled, which perhaps could be argued could be handled through a provider relationship now. And I think that public health is uniquely capable of handling certain things very well, but I'm not sure that we have a seat at the table. I'm also very concerned because I don't know if communities in valuing certain things are going to value public health as much as we value it. So these are very, very difficult questions. I also think that as leaders now have to make decisions about how we actually work in communities in ways that we hadn't before. Finding ways to use very well-trained but less costly staff to do work in the community that may have been traditionally done by someone who was a community health nurse is one of those examples that a lot of my colleagues share difficulty with. And I also think that there's something else that I think we need to accept, which is that we have a lot of staff who view public health a certain way. They believe in clinical services. They believe in a traditional kind of public health system. And we are embarking on a totally new journey, and where we have to be flexible and open and willing to adjust to the needs of our communities. And one of the issues that I think we have to be cognizant of is that we have very well staff who sometimes don't agree with that new model. So part of the process is our diplomacy in supporting our staff and re-educating our colleagues on what we intend to serve the community.
And this is Carol. I think this will be one of the most challenging efforts many of us in local public health go through over the next few years. I think in some of our very rural areas where we are the safety net for some of those clinical services, it's hard to envision how the people will continue to get that service without public health. But I do agree, with the other coaches as well. This is one of those opportunities we have to look at how we've done business in the past and to get ourselves to the table with those making decisions for the future. I'm not convinced it'll be a blanket no clinical services for local public health. I'm not convinced of that at all. I think it really will be a community by community decision as they're looking at how their their accountable care organizations, or how their networks are arranged, and maybe having, just getting ourselves to that table to have those discussions. I do think we'll look different than we are now, and needing to get our staff on board to make that happen, like Andre said. I think this is going to be one of our most critical challenges coming forward.
Thank you, coaches, for your responses. We have time for one more question. If anybody has a pressing question, please feel free to ask it. Okay, fantastic. If there are any other questions, we do hope that both coaches and fellows have found this call to be helpful. Fellows, hopefully you've gotten a better sense of who each of our coaches today are and who might be your best match. And coaches, we know that you're very excited about the opportunity to mentor this 2012-2013 cohort. Before we end, just a few reminders. We will have a recording of this meeting available, and I'll be sending that out later today. It's also for the folks who weren't able to join us live. After the meeting, I'll be asking each of the fellows to send me your top 3 choices by this Friday, December 7th. And like I mentioned before, we'll be doing our best to form the teams of 5 with each coach based on your preferences. Secondly, if you have received an email about travel from ATC or Reardon, please contact Francesca Blanco at NATRO. I can send out her email to the group. And for both coaches and fellows, please remember that NATRO would like to have your flights booked to San Antonio for the kickoff by this Friday, December 7th. Okay, and finally, if you could please complete the Emergenetics profile by Friday 21st in preparation for the January kickoff would be great. So thank you again, everyone, for your participation, and please feel free to contact me with any questions or concerns you might have. We look forward to